Kelim Perik Vav Mishnah Base. In Mishnah Aleph we learned that a kira doesn't have to be made out of a solid keli with all the walls surrounding the oval shape of the kira. You can actually make a kira with having 3 pitputim, as long as you are mechaber the pitputim betit, and that chibur betit can be on top, as the Bartanura learned, or it could be at the bottom to the ground, stuck to the ground. Then those 3 pitputim, no matter what material they're made of, have a din of kira. The Mishnah also said in Mishnah Aleph, the Tanakama holds, hu adin, if you haven't got 3 legs as a kira, you just use 2 stones. As long as you're mechaber the 2 stones betit, then those 2 stones have a din of kira because of the chibur of tit at the top. Because the tit, of course, turns into cheres after the first hesek. Says the Mishnah, ha'even, you've got a stone, and the stone is assumed to be a kira stone, which means the stone is mechuba betit. Although in Mishnah Aleph we kept on talking about a chibur shel tit, which is lamala, on top of the pitputim, on the top, we said in the name of the Tosefta that hu adin, this is the way the Gon and the Rosh actually learn in Mishnah Aleph, the chibur betit also works if it's done lamata. In other words, if the pitputim were mechuba la'aretz betit, at the bottom of the pitputim, they're stuck into the ground with mud. Although you can learn Mishnah Aleph either way, it appears from the Rishonim that Mishnah Base has to be learnt that the chibur batit we're dealing with here, l'chule alma, is the chibur batit l'mata. And in fact the Rosh says, because Mishnah Base must be talking about a chibur batit l'mata, Mishnah Aleph is also talking about a chibur batit l'mata. So let's assume that Mishnah Base, dealing with a chibur batit, the chibur batit required to make it into a kira, is dealing with a chibur tit at the bottom, where the even is stuck to the ground, it's stuck with tit. Says the Mishnah, ha'even shoyesh shoifes oleha v'al hatanur, or oleha v'al akira, or oleha v'al akupach tmeya. You have here a kira made, it's a little stove made with 2 walls. One wall of the kira is the even being mechuba betit lamata. The other wall is not another even, the other wall is itself the outer edge of a tanur. So you have your even stuck to the ground, and on this side you have a tanur. So and you place your kedera balancing on the tanur and on the even. So you've got your ches shape, the tanur, the even, and the kedera on top. So your kira is made up of an even mechuber betit and a tanur. Or oleh vala kira. You've got your even betit, and then you have a real kira, a normal oval shaped kira on the other side, and then you place your kedera balancing on the kira and on the even. Or it's oleh vala kupach. You've got your even betit, and on the other side, you don't have a tanur or a kira, you have a kupach. A kupach, we said before, we had this in the beginning of Perik Hay, Mishnah Base. A kupach is like a kira, but a kira is more oval, it's wide enough to put 2 kederas on top. A kupach is narrow, circular, it's made for 1 kedera. All of these, the kira, the tanur, and the kupach are makabel tumah gzeres hakosuf. But when you have a kira made up of an even batit, and the other side itself is the outer wall of a tanur, or a kira, or a kupach, we learn out from a pasuk that this space in between, enclosed by the even batit and the tanur, kira and kupach, it's itself got a din of a kira. Tameya, then this arrangement is got a din of a kira, and it's tomei. So you've got your even, which is mechuba batit. The mechuba batit is the primary ingredient of the wall of a kira, and the other side is a wall of the kira and tanur kupach itself. Then this is called a stove, it's called a kira, and it's mekabel tumah. However, if you use, again, we've got on one side, you've got your even mechuba batit, that side's fine. But then on the other side, you have an ordinary even, which is not mechuba batit. That's called oleha. Oleha mean on the even, which is mechuba batit. Va'ala even and on an ordinary stone which is not mechuba batit, or oleha on the even which is mechuba batit, valasela on a rock which is not mechuba batit, or oleha valakoisel on an even which is mechuba batit, and the other side the pot rests on a wall, because you don't have both sides of the kira mechuba batit, and one side is actually something which is not makabel tumah at all, has no shaykhus to kabbalas tumah of tanur and kira, then tahira, then this arrangement is tahir, because you haven't got your shtei avonim mechuba batit. And the Mishnah adds a very interesting fact. V'zu, this type of arrangement of stones not being mechuba batit, or maybe one is mechuba batit and one isn't. Zu hoisa kiras hanazirim shebirushalayim. This was the kira, the stove of the Nazirim in Yerushalayim. Shekeneged hasela, they used a stone mechuba batit, opposite a piece of rock which was not mechuba batit. Therefore, it was an arrangement to make sure that this kira was not able to be makabel tumah. This is actually quite interesting. This kiras hanazirim, the Rambam says, actually was in the Lishkas Hanazirim. This was a room on the southeast Mizrachis Deromis corner of the Ezras Noshim. So you walked into the Ezras Noshim, turned left, and it was straight there in the corner. This was a special room, Ezras Noshim. It had the Kedusha of Harabais. And this room was used to cook the shlomim of the Nazir. And they had a special stove, a stove which was not able to be makabel tumah. And what's interesting is, why was there a special stove just for the Shalmei Nazir and not for any other kodshim? Teresa Sol talks about this. I just want to suggest something. And the reason why is, why was the oven, the stove for cooking the Shalmei Nazir, in the Ezras Noshim? It was kodshim kalim. Kodshim kalim is mutter in the whole of Yerushalayim. The reason is because, true, kodshim kalim can be eaten in the whole of Yerushalayim, but there's a special din with the shlomim of a Nazir that after it's cooked, the kohen takes the zroya b'sheila, the cooked arm of the animal, and does tnufa lifnei Hashem, takes it back into the Azara and does tnufa lifnei Hashem on it. That's why the Shalmei Nazir was cooked there and not cooked in the whole of Yerushalayim, because the Israel had to go back for Tnufa. That's why there was a special room, a yuchad, for the Nazirim, for the Shalmei Nazir in the Beis HaMikdash, because of this Tnufa of the Zroya B'Sheila. The Kodshim in the actual Ezras Yisrael, Ezras Kohanim in the Azara proper, the Kohanim is Rizimhein. So there was no need to worry about Tumah. But this was done in the Ezras Noshim, and it wasn't done necessarily by the Kohanim. It was done by all any Yisrael. Therefore, they were a little bit more machmer to make sure that it stayed B'tara, especially as the Israel had to go back into the Azara proper for Tnufa, and that's why there was a special oven called the Kiras Hanazirim. And the Mishnah carries on. Kiras Hatabochim, an arrangement of kiras, of stoves. This was done wholesale in a market where there were lots of cookings going on. So you had a stone, the fire, stone, fire, stone, fire. And then the pots were placed on each stone. On each two sets of stones there was a pot placed. And then on the same stone was used to balance a bit of the next pot. So you had a whole series of chesed arrangements, like a Stonehenge. And there were lots of them. So the question is, each one is his own name, his own kira. And we had before in Perik Base, Mishnah Zayin, Kalmarin Hamtu Omos, when you have a Kli Cheres made up of lots of different compartments, because each toich is as choshev as the other one, when the sheretz falls into one, although it's one keli, it's all stuck together, but each toich, it's the toich that defines the Kli Cheres. And therefore when the sheretz falls into one compartment, it's only that compartment that becomes Tomei. So where you have a lot of kiras, although they're sharing the same stone, says the Mishnah, Kiras hatabochim bismanshu noisen even betzad even. You base stone, space, stone, space, stone, space. Nitmes achas mehem. Each area between two stones is considered to be its own kira, and if a sheretz falls into that area, of course all the stones now are mechuba batit, otherwise they wouldn't have a shem kira. If the stone falls between two stones, lo nitmu kulon, it's only that kira, those two stones, and the area in between that becomes tamei. The others are unaffected. We'll see in the next Mishnah how actually we do this in detail when you have 2 or 3 stones sharing a kira arrangement. What happens to a kira becoming only half tamei and half tire? What happens if you remove the stones afterwards or you put new ones on? We'll deal with that to Mitzvah Hashem in Mishnah.